In today's episode of the Pathlong Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Andrew Keehn. He is hailing over from Prolifiq, and he's the director of demand generation. And a lot of you folks who are listening in are obviously in growth mode at the very moment. So probably quite interesting what the folks at Prolifiq are doing at the very moment, specifically if you're leveraging Salesforce. So I'd say, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Give us a 360 overview. What is Prolifiq all about?
Yeah, sure. So Prolifiq at a high level, we are a native Salesforce application that very basically takes account and opportunity planning from Google Slides, Google Sheets, PowerPoint, Excel, Lucidchart, and brings it directly and natively into Salesforce. So if you're doing your relationship mapping in Lucidchart, we bring that into Salesforce. If you're strategically managing your key accounts and understanding who the influencers are at a key account, whether it's an enterprise, mid-market, we bring all of that into Salesforce. And same goes for opportunity planning. So what we've learned over time is that reps historically and revenue-focused teams have had all this siloed data in different applications like Microsoft, Google Suite, and we have tried to bring that into one consolidated place in Salesforce. So we are a sales enablement software used most typically by sales teams naturally, but also customer success teams and sales operations and sales enablement teams as well, historically.
Yeah, makes sense. And maybe tell us a little bit more about the types of companies that are leveraging Prolifiq and that getting the most value out of it. Do they have to be a certain size? Does the sales team have to have a certain size? Is that, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So anyone using Salesforce could be a fit for Prolifiq, and that could be whether it's using our relationship map solely, whether that's using our Crush application. We also have what we call Prolifiq Ace, which is our digital content management solution. There's really not necessarily a requirement on a sales team size. We see it vary. We see it vary from as small as 3 to 5 reps upwards of thousands of reps at certain customers. So we really do cater to anyone that is looking to bring their sales motion, really their key account management strategy from an external source into Salesforce. Size of the team doesn't matter. Sales cycle doesn't necessarily matter. We see teams using Prolifiq that have sales cycles as fast as 30 to 45 days. And we have teams that have sales cycles that last, from 12 to 18 months. So there really is, the nice thing with Prolifiq is we are methodology agnostic, and we really do help configure the tool based on your selling process and your selling motion.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, cool. And who would you say is typically bringing the tool on board? Is that the head of sales, or is that individual reps, or is that coming that more from a C-suite who want to bring that in, or maybe like a CRM manager? Like who is identifying the tool?
Yeah, great question. You hit on a lot of people that are involved in the decision-making process. We'll typically see a Salesforce admin involved. We'll see sales enablement or sales operations people. Typically, you'll see either a sales manager, director, or VP, someone who kind of initiates this search, let's say. So they're usually all working in some fashion together to evaluate different tools like Prolifiq and in the account planning space and to bring it on. So all of those people are typically involved. The nice thing with being a Salesforce native application is you go right into the App Store in Salesforce and it downloads in, I think, 15 or 20-ish minutes. It's pretty easy to download it directly. So that's typically from what I've seen, it's either a sales enablement or a Salesforce admin that's downloading it though and working with our team to configure it.
Very cool. And how do these folks hear about Prolifiq? Like what would be sort of the journey that they're going through? In other words, what would be sort of the key client acquisition channels? And also obviously you as a seasoned growth marketer, what are you looking forward to in regards to the channels?
Yeah, great question. I'd say for people coming inbound, the Salesforce App Exchange brings a lot of traffic to our website. We're on the App Exchange for a few different product lines. That brings quite a bit of traffic inbound. You do have people that come through direct search via Google that come inbound organically. I'd say historically, we've also been very outbound driven as well. As a marketer, I'm, in my first 90 days, I have looked to build a strategy that really focuses on what I'd say are 3 core pillars or strategic initiatives that everything we do is going to focus around one of those strategic initiatives. So it's called a GHOST plan: goals, objectives, strategic initiatives, and tactics. I think that's been really helpful for us to build out and really work with, between myself, our leader, our sales VP, and my boss, our CEO, to flesh out what does the CEO want, where is his vision for the company to go over the next 6 to 12 months. And then it helps me build out what needs to happen on the marketing side to enable our selling team to have more, inbound demo requests. I think that's naturally the goal. I'd rather them do less prospecting, more people coming in and naturally raising their hands. So that's at a high level. Channels, I think a lot of what you would typically hear, we're very active in LinkedIn, we're active in Facebook, we're using Google, PPC for very high intent search terms. We're using display ads. We are leveraging third-party partnerships like JB Sales. We are working with partners that we currently have in our ecosystem to help us get the word out to their customers. So I'd say it really is a flywheel of how we're ultimately trying to engage what I would call good fit companies and the right people within those companies to bring them and make them more aware of Prolifiq and how we can help.
Gotcha. You mentioned that inbound is, starting to grow in significance for you guys. Obviously, the app exchange, but then also other sources. How do you currently think about the website in terms of, where do you see its current strength versus where do you see room for improvement, moving forward?
Yeah, I would say for me, one thing I'm always thinking about on the demand gen and growth side is how do we make it as easy as possible for people to get the information they're looking for on our website. And if they want to, connect with our sales team as soon as they feel is necessary, right? And so we've worked hard to make our demo page more accessible, to get simple things like getting forms above the fold, having clear and more concise copy about how we help. When someone fills out a form, my goal is, as we implement HubSpot, to be able to book a rep directly after you submit a demo request. That way there's, they don't have to wait on us to follow up. It's, hey, whenever you're ready to speak with us, you choose. And it'll have all of our reps availability. So I think it's small things like that from a website perspective, we can do that don't cost a lot of money and don't necessarily take a lot of time to help us get more people through that inbound process. I think an area for improvement is just continuing to be really, really clear about what account and opportunity planning is. I think everyone, especially in the B2B SaaS space or in the B2B space in general, everyone is doing, account planning and opportunity planning and, in a lot of cases, relationship mapping as well, to some extent. Whether they call it that or not, I think there's no uniform terminology necessarily for what account planning is. I think there's an opportunity for us to be really clear about what it is and how Prolifiq helps, make that easier and bring it, right into your CRM, where your reps, your customer success teams, your marketing teams are working out of every single day. So that would be one area I think that we're going to continue to try and simplify it to what that really is.
Very good. You've been in interesting roles. You've been in marketing automation, digital marketing. So you've been involved with a lot of, marketing roles, as I'm saying. What I'm curious is, right, as we were speaking about the website, how do you typically, go, and that doesn't need to be necessarily for Prolifiq, but just in your experience, how do you typically go about figuring out why people do or do not convert on the website? Sort of, what is your sort of, strategies, techniques, tools? Maybe give us an insight.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, it's really difficult to understand that. We're looking at things in Google Analytics like bounce rates, time spent on page, average number of page views viewed in a session. We're using it as Hotjar to ultimately assess where people are clicking around and exiting, using exit intent pop-ups to try and capture some of the people that are leaving. I think to understand why people are leaving is really difficult. What I try to focus on more is understanding where we're losing them and what can we possibly do to mitigate that risk of not converting someone or getting the most out of their experience on our website. It's a challenge that everyone faces. That's the way I've tried to look at it, is what can we do to make that experience really good for people that are potentially bouncing, or, specific pages that we're having higher bounce rates. What is the copy like? What's the experience like? Are we taking too long to get to the meat of what we're trying to get across? Those are the things we start to assess internally as we see the data coming in. So it's a challenge. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I would love for our bounce rate to be zero and our time on the page to go up 50% month over month every month. But there are things. Those are kind of the key things we're looking at in Google Analytics and other places to assess what's working.
Makes sense. In recent episodes of the Pathfinder Presents podcast, a topic has been starting to emerge. I'm not sure if that's already relevant and you're thinking about it. Let me know. The cookieless future, is that something you already start thinking about? Is that something that is currently not priority? Maybe how you think about it?
Yeah, I would say for us, it's kind of we're trying to balance right now, especially as a small company that's really trying to grow quickly. We're trying to balance what does that mean right now and what does it mean in the future. And I think what does it mean going forward in the future, especially is I think organic reach and just, trust around your brand is going to be really, really critical. So one thing we're focusing on as a group here is how do we do more to get people, active in communities like LinkedIn, on apps, even like TikTok, right? Where TikTok to me feels like it's not going away. And so how do we begin to understand TikTok as a platform and what that can mean from a marketing perspective going forward? Sites like G2 and Capterra, right? Those are places that people are always going to go and review, especially when you're making significant investments in technology. People are going to talk to their peers. They're going to look at reviews. How do we increase our presence and increase our credibility on those sites? And then lastly, I would say communities. I'm part of several marketing groups. We have sales reps here. Our audience, I'd say typically from a demographic perspective, like I mentioned, the sales leaders, sales enablement folks. How do we build relationships in communities and provide value? I think that's a way organically that we can go in there with the intent of not trying to sell anyone on product or methodology or anything like that, but build that relationship and build that trust so that if the time does come where someone says, hey, I could use help with the counter opportunity planning, they're already thinking about one of my reps, or someone in a marketing community is thinking about me versus someone of our, one of our competitors. So I think from a cookieless future, like I said, just being reputable, having credibility, and making sure your organic reach is as strong as possible is going to be really critical. And part of that comes down to, just building personal brands, but also, having really good content that people want to engage with. That's going to become increasingly important in my opinion.
Yeah, makes sense. Appreciate that insight. Very interesting, because it's early stages for a lot of growth marketers at the very moment, and everybody takes a slightly different stance. Sure. It's super interesting. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a bit more about growth marketing in general. So there's a lot of content on growth marketing. There's tons of blogs, smart advice, everything from case studies to reports. Where do you like to educate yourself? Like, what are your go-to places in order to keep, learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think LinkedIn naturally is a spot where a lot of people are posting. I do believe that LinkedIn can kind of be, especially, your followers, it can be a kind of an echo chamber of hearing a lot of the same things. So that's where I think like marketing communities for me have been tremendous. I'm part of DGMG and a couple other groups on Slack as well, where it's a great place to ask questions and hear from people that are either going through a similar experience real time or have gone through it before. I try to just dive into just marketing content, even Googling things, right? There's so much you can learn just from basically Googling. So I go through Google for quite a bit, whether it's more technical things, with setting up or connecting things in our tech stack or automating certain, parts of a job potentially. Google is heavy there. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, I think it's a lot of it, honestly, for me, and I'm sure not the only one, is doing it. Right. I learned so much by testing, by gathering the data that comes in with everything you try. And failing is not necessarily a bad thing if you fail fast. And I think that's honestly more beneficial than anything you're going to read online or hear in a community or on a podcast. Is you've got to do it. And that's where you're going to really start to assess what works best with your audience. So even in the last 90 days for me, we've learned so much about what's resonating with our audience versus what I thought might resonate. And that's something that unless you do it, you can't get that kind of knowledge.
That makes sense. Very cool. DGMG sounds very cool for everybody who's interested. You Google it up. It's quite an interesting community in the B2B marketing space. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening are already in there. For the ones who are new to it, check it out. Very cool. Yeah, let's wrap it up with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for those?
Let's do it.
What's the last book you read?
Oh gosh, great question. Psychology or Influence, by Robert Cialdini. That was a good one.
What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Customer expansion. It's the lowest CAC. It's our highest win rates historically, fastest sales cycles. That's our number one strategic initiative, customer expansion.
If there would be no boundaries in tech, what would be the one thing you would fix for your role?
Oh man, great question. Oh gosh, that really is a good one. I would just make it easier from an opportunity, like managing opportunities as a group, especially as you build big books of business. How can we make it simpler to automate when someone needs follow-up, what kind of content should be delivered for every single, I guess, stage that they're in. That for me is technology we don't currently have that I think would make my life easier.
Yeah. What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Bringing in new business, honestly, that and not enough people knowing who we are or how we help. Those are things that I'm always thinking about, especially people knowing who we are. It all starts with less about Prolifiq, more of being aware of the challenge of what opportunity and account planning really should look like and how it can help them, win more deals because of it.
Very cool. And for the last question, I would love to do a little bit of time travel. I know you've been at Kellogg, but let's go back to the days of Illinois, University of Illinois. And what I would love to ask you is, heading out of, basically the first education on the university level, what's the one advice you would give yourself for your growth marketing career?
I think one thing that you're not really taught as much traditionally in college is how important it is to connect with customers regularly and to just try and understand what's working, your customers, what of your solution is helping them, where are they struggling, what does their day-to-day look like. You hear a lot about just, your basic marketing cover terms and how you should think about the 4 Ps and, this or that. The one thing that I feel like was never really introduced was how important it is to actually just talk to people. And so that's been something I've tried to do in my first 90 days here. I try to jump on a lot of CS calls. I listen to go on calls, but I try to, more importantly, when I'm on the CS calls, ask questions myself. And that's where you get stuff that it's just tough to uncover otherwise. So I'd say just speaking to people. It's not, it seems so intuitive and basic, but it's not something that's typically brought up.
Yeah. Andrew, I appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on Pathfind Presents. I want to give you the last word, right? If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Prolifiq, what's the one thing that they should remember?
I would say in terms of growing your business and bringing all of your processes from these external sources into Salesforce, Prolifiq helps you do that. I think it really is, in my one sentence pitch, we take everything from Google and Microsoft Office and Google Suite, bring it right into Salesforce and make it easier for you to win new deals and expand with your current customers. So
thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathfind Presents.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me. This is great.